In today's brief video, I want to take a moment and talk about sobriety, particularly from nicotine, THC, energy drinks, adult media content, and alcohol, all substances that I once struggled with. A lot of people hear the term sobriety, and I think they feel that it's like, oh, that's not for me. That's just for someone who has had problems with substances. Or people hear sobriety and they think, oh, that sounds terrible. I would never talk to someone who doesn't drink alcohol. Or it's weird if you don't smoke weed. Being sober, why would you ever want to do that? There's a lot of people who can't even comprehend the idea of sobriety. And actually, I would just say society as a whole is like that. And I think that's a tragedy because sobriety to me is a form of discipline that is the ultimate when it comes to self-development and self-mastery. And I want to explain exactly why that is, because if you're new to getting sober, quitting weed, quitting alcohol, quitting smoking, whatever it is, or you've been sober for a little bit and you kind of aren't sure why you're doing this video is going to help to remind you why that is. In getting sober, putting down these substances, one thing that I developed was discipline. Sobriety and the practice of sobriety. I see sobriety as a practice, the same way you would practice martial arts. I see sobriety as no different. It's a practice. You develop discipline. It takes a lot of discipline to repetitively say no over and over again when we are constantly bombarded by these substances. Whether it's adult media content being tempted through the form of social media content, right? It's constantly being pushed on us. Whether it's alcohol when we're at restaurants, when we're at gas stations, when you're just in the grocery store, you're constantly bombarded with the advertisements on the television. Now we're seeing the same thing with cannabis. There's dispensaries popping up right and left, and you're seeing tons of pro-cannabis influencers, and it's all over now when it comes to the media and just day-to-day people consuming. It takes a lot of discipline to constantly be surrounded by stuff and repetitively make the decision to say no. And I could say the same thing, look, about junk food and sugar and all of that crap as well. When you practice sobriety, you're inevitably teaching yourself delayed gratification. Yes, drinking this alcohol. Yes, having that smoke. Yes, consuming nicotine. There would be a moment of pleasure, right? I won't deny that. There is that moment of pleasure, but you're giving in now and sacrificing for what it is you wanted later on in life, right? So the person who smokes cigarettes a lot, they're sacrificing their health later on in life for that immediate pleasure now. It's no different with drinking. It's no different with becoming addicted to weed. You sacrifice now in order to obtain the things that you want later on in life. Although maybe here's the difference between me and a lot of people. I don't view, or at least I no longer view, drinking and smoking and watching adult media content. I don't view giving that up as a sacrifice. At least at this point in my life, I don't. So delayed gratification, and that's a really important one because when you look at successful individuals, there's 2 or 3 traits that they all seem to have in common, and they've studied this. Delayed gratification, willpower, and grit all seem to come across the board. Commitment, and this could go along with perseverance. When you become sober, you're making a commitment to yourself, and in order to see that commitment through, you have to persevere. You have to be consistent in your choice of committing to the decision that you made to become sober. And I think it's through this ongoing commitment because for me, this wasn't just, oh, I'm not drinking this weekend or, oh, I'm not going to smoke for a year. It was, I'm done with alcohol. I'm done with weed, period. And it's that level of commitment done consistently and persistently over a prolonged period of time that's eventually going to build up your confidence. So maybe unlike martial arts, right? You practice the discipline of martial arts, you get better at fighting, you're able to beat down your opponent, and then you feel, a little more confident. Your skills have gone up. We're doing and accomplishing something very, very similar in the act of sobriety because when you make a commitment to yourself, and you see that commitment through, when you keep your word to yourself, you're going to notice your confidence starts to go up. Accountability. I think sobriety is the ultimate form of accountability because anyone who's been around sobriety long enough, anyone who's quit long enough has come to realize in one way, shape, or form that this choice, this decision is on them. and it operates independently and irrelevantly of other factors going on in the world. My decision to not drink is my decision, and there's nothing else that's going to influence that decision but that choice that comes from within me to not drink, to not smoke, to not watch adult media content, whatever it is. And if I mess up, it is solely on me because I'm the one who made the choice to do so. I think as well, another thing that we develop in sobriety is overcoming fears. For anyone who's ever struggled with a substance use addiction or disorder, there's often a lot of fear involved. And a lot of that fear has to do with, what's my life going to be like once I put down the drugs? Am I ever going to enjoy life again? I've been doing drugs for 10 years. I don't even know what life is going to be like on the other side of this. And there's a lot of fear, I would argue, very similar to the fear that a person may feel when they're going to step into that ring to fight. Very similar to that person who's having their first Krav Maga match or whatever, MMA match. Like, there's very real fear associated with quitting substances. And you have to overcome that fear in order to obtain a certain level of sobriety. Now, I think this is super important because when you take all of these things that you can strengthen simply by making the choice not to consume drugs again, whatever the drug may be, alcohol, weed, nicotine, pornography, gambling, sugar, junk food, you are going to further develop each of these categories. It's like making a muscle stronger over time. How do I get more discipline? How do I develop more willpower? How do I get better at delayed gratification? How do I improve my confidence? Don't do drugs, period. And repeatedly each day, day in and day out, make the decision again to not do drugs that day. And indirectly, you're going to further develop discipline, commitment, accountability, confidence. You're going to further strengthen your delayed gratification, your willpower. This is why I think sobriety and the practice of sobriety is one of the ultimate forms of self-development and self-mastery. And this could apply to anyone. It doesn't have to apply to the alcoholic or the stoner or the fiend or whatever terms you want to use. This can apply to anyone who's looking to improve those aspects of their life. And the coolest thing is, once you improve them in the sobriety process, you can then take those traits and apply them to anything else and everything else that you do, right? That's how I've built a YouTube channel. That's how we've built a fairly large addiction recovery coaching business, which, hey, you can learn more about in the pinned comment in the video description, as well as our Kick It, Crave Less chewing gum supplement line. Now, beyond that, sobriety and the practice of it comes with many benefits. If I were to practice, let's say, Krav Maga or fighting, gain into a ring, there's some negatives. I'm gonna get my butt kicked a lot of times. Now, in early sobriety, there might be some negatives too. You're gonna go through some withdrawals. You might get your butt kicked a little bit. But on the other side of that, you have improved physical health, you have improved mental health, and you have improved financial health. These are all outcomes for those who practice sobriety long term. Better physical health, better mental health, more money in your bank account. Take those positive things, combine it with the development of all those other traits that I listed earlier, and this is a win-win. This is something to get excited about. You don't have to go run a marathon. You don't have to go climb Mount Everest. You don't have to fast for 40 days to prove these things to yourself. And a lot of times what I see in sobriety is people will do all that other stuff. They'll go run a marathon. They'll do a big fast. They'll do some work challenge. All while ignoring one of the central causes of all their problems, which is substance use. I see that all the time. So if that's you, be aware of that. The last thing that I'll say is this. The practice of sobriety teaches us to live in the moment without escapism, and it teaches us to live and sit with our own thoughts and our own emotions. And this is something that very few people are capable of in today's society, and I think it's a skill that's well worth nurturing and developing. To be able to feel sad and not have to escape. To be able to feel happy and not have to escape. To be able to deal with the emotions that are going to come across your way day in and day out and not have to feel the need to run from those is a very, very, very powerful thing, because I would argue that's how a majority of people these days are completely derailing themselves. We become overly reactive to our emotions, and this often results in what? In excessive substance use. At least in my case, that was the outcome. If you're not psyched about getting sober, hopefully this video made you a little more motivated. If you are sober and you're struggling and you're like, you know what? I'm not developing those things though. Why? I'm doing this thing. I put down the drug. I did that, but I don't feel like I'm getting any of this out of it. Consider booking a one-on-one coaching call. You can find information on that in the pinned comment or the video description. Otherwise, just follow me into the next video. YouTube recommended it to you, so it's one you haven't watched before.